Dear friends, I am Sanjay Mansukhani speaking to you from Kolkata. I am a teacher of Patanjali Yoga Sutras, and Patanjali Yoga Sutras, as I'm sure all of you know, is the Yoga Shastra, is the science of yoga, is a compilation of the ancient yogic knowledge from the spiritual land of India. It was collected by Maharishi Patanjali and he compiled it in the form of 196 Yoga Sutras. And these Yoga Sutras are powerful statements, and each statement conveys a big meaning about the true power of the human mind, about the functioning of the human mind, about the depth of working of the human mind. And dear friends, today we will look in detail at a very interesting phenomenon. I am sure you do not know about it, and what you will learn today will be an eye-opener for you. Yes, it will remove certain myths which you have about yoga. What happens in the mind of a yogi or in the mind of any person who is practicing meditation? Question: do we know what actually happens inside the mind of a yogi who is doing dhyana, who is concentrating his mind on one object or on one image for a long period of time? What is actually happening in the yogi's mind while he is sitting still in an asana, full in concentration, meditating on an object or a subject of his choice? Dear friends, very interesting aspects take place. Number one, Patanjali says in his definition of yoga, in the second sutra of the first chapter on samadhi, he says, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirudha. What is yoga? Yoga is the practice of stilling the thoughts in the mind. And when the thoughts in the mind are completely controlled, there are no thoughts. Now is the time and now is the stage where yoga is said to take place, where the final merger with the all-powerful soul, Purusha, Atma, actually happens, and the yogi moves from his mind state of consciousness to the Atma state of consciousness. Dear friends, Patanjali in his sutras in the third chapter, this third chapter is on the mystic powers which a yogi acquires by practice. In this, on the ninth sutra, he says that Nirudha is the state of control. Nirudha is the state of restraint, where the thoughts are restrained and they stop coming. So he says, Nirudha happens when there is disappearance of the outgoing sanskaras and when there is appearance of the restraining sanskaras. So what it means is, when the mind is without thoughts, that time, dear friends, there are two forces which are acting. One force is the normal force, the conventional force of our routine regular thoughts, of our routine regular sanskaras, which have a tendency, which run into the outer world and they want to perform some activities. So these are outward going sanskaras or outward going thoughts which turn into outward karma. This is what normally happens in us, Our mind is busy trying to engage with the world outside. So this is a habit, and this will keep on happening even when a person is sitting for meditation and trying to calm his mind, trying to control the thoughts in his mind, trying to put them, the sanskaras and the vrittis, to rest. So these two forces, they counter each other. And when they counter each other, the end result is that there is a state of restraint, there is a state of Nirudha. So dear friends, we all know that the mind essentially is part of Prakriti. And Prakriti has the three qualities, the three gunas. And one of the prominent gunas of Prakriti is Rajas. Rajas means the property, the quality of change. That is why in this Prakriti, in this body, mind, matter complex, everything constantly changes, keeps on fluctuating. Nothing stays fixed for a permanent period of time. Everything is temporary, everything is transient, everything goes through a shift. So if that is the case, then how is it possible that in the state of meditation, the mind is not getting influenced by the gunas, the mind is not getting influenced by the Prakriti and its inherent qualities? Why is Rajas, which is bringing about constant change in Prakriti, not acting in the state of meditation? Dear friends, these three gunas always act. As long as the Prakriti is present in the form of an evolved structure of the cosmic mind, the individual mind, the ego, the senses of perception, senses of action, the subtle elements of this creation and the gross elements of this creation, these three gunas of Prakriti will always be there. So when we look to the world outside, we see a world full of change. We see a world full of motion. We see a world which is transient. Everything changes, constantly changes. Change is the only constant. But once a person is entering the state of meditation, at that point of time, what he finds is he is able to develop certain thoughts, certain sanskaras, which are restraining thoughts and restraining sanskaras. So these restraining thoughts, restraining sanskaras, they try to control and put a stop to all those thoughts and all those sanskaras which are rushing to the world outside and trying to perform action. So as a meditation, his mind is full of these outward going thoughts and sanskaras. And as he sits and practices meditation, he is able to increase the restraining sanskaras, the Nirodha sanskaras, and slowly both of them act on each other, and the number of thoughts and the number of sanskaras active inside us, they keep on reducing, and a stage is reached where they equal each other in strength but are performing the opposite functions. And when they are performing the opposite functions to somebody externally, even to that yogi or to that person who is meditating, it seems as if the mind is at rest, the mind has become still, and there is no motion in the mind. But no, friends, Rajas is present. Both the thoughts are changing, both the thoughts are present. The outward going thoughts are present and the restraining Nirodha thoughts are present, but as a combination, as the sum total of both these thoughts, the overall result is silence, stillness, calmness, and we get a feeling that all the thoughts, all the vrittis have been Nirudha, they have been controlled, and there is no motion in the mind. So there is in fact a dynamic action going on while the mind is in meditation and is experiencing calmness and silence. This experience comes in the higher stages of the Sabija Samadhi. Sabija Samadhi is one of the initial samadhis which a person undertakes at the beginning of Samadhi. So this is a Samadhi which is practiced by beginners and those who have been in the path of meditation for some time. But advanced meditators usually are in the upper realms of the Sabij Samadhi, or they are still higher in the Nirbij Samadhi. So Sabij Samadhi has six stages. So the lower stages is what the new beginners usually experience, whereas the higher stages where some sort of Nirodha happens to such an extent that the outward going sanskaras and the Nirodha sanskaras, they cancel out, they balance out each other, and there is a sense of calmness and silence for the meditator. This practice of generating Nirodha sanskars does not happen in a short while. It takes a sufficient amount of practice, abhyas, by a meditator. It might even take a few years. It might involve a few yogic practices as mentioned in the Ashtanga Yoga. The first one being yama, to maintain some kind of social discipline. The second is niyama, to follow certain personal discipline. To practice asana, which is comfortable and steady, and then meditate on ananta, meditate on the infinite. Fourth, to practice some form of pranayama. There are 4 forms of pranayama, but the beginners can practice the first 3 forms. So once when the pranayama is also performed, the mind comes more and more under control, under regulation. So the commentators say, especially I can talk about Vijnana Bhikshu, he says it takes time, it takes effort, because the mind is essentially slow to change, and it takes time to mold the mind in a particular direction. So for the mind to learn the habit of creating restraining thoughts, restraining sanskaras whenever the meditator is sitting for his meditation will take time. But once he gets into the habit of these restraining sanskaras, then it is easy for him. Any time he can easily, probably in 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, start reaching the deeper and deeper levels of meditation. So friends, once when a meditator, a person becomes an expert, proficient in cultivating these restraining sanskaras, then he finds his mind now flows in peace. His mind now flows without any disturbance. Why is it called a flow? The term used here is prasanta, vahita. Prasanta means that which is pleasing, and vahita means a flow. So it becomes a pleasing flow. Now here, when the restraining sanskaras, they get weakened, then suddenly the outgoing sanskaras become active, and they again pull the mind out into the world, and the mind again starts generating number of thoughts. So the stillness, the calmness, the peace in the mind disappears. It is important to know that these sanskaras, the restraining sanskaras, are actually a series of sanskaras, and they are similar in nature, and they come in a sequence like a movie reel with various films. And here one must remember that these restraining sanskaras also are not static in nature. Even in deep meditation, one finds that these restraining sanskaras are flowing continuously in a chain, but this is controlled, and it by its own inner power starts controlling the mind. It gives us a controlled mind because the restraining and the outward going sanskaras are able to balance each other out. But the main point here is that the mind flows and the sanskaras flow. They flow in a sequence. And we must also remember that samadhi is a state where the mind becomes one pointed. And when the mind becomes one pointed, that means the mind changes its behavior. Under normal circumstances, our mind is busy in running all over the place. It starts focusing on anything and everything under the sun. It cannot rest at one place. But in samadhi, the mind has to be brought to rest at one place. The mind which is scattered, the term here is sarva artha. The mind which is everywhere has to be brought to one place, one point, and that is called ekagrata. So the mind has to reach a state of ekagrata. The mind has to be fixed on one object, one point. And when this starts happening and one is able to increase it to the highest potential possible, then the state of samadhi is attained. So samadhi can only be attained when we are in a state of one-pointedness, and the mind by its own nature, essential basic nature, has a tendency to run all over the place, be in 100 places at the same point of time. So we have to discipline the mind, cultivate the mind, make it behave and bring it to one point. We have to make it ekagra, and that is how samadhi can be reached. So once when we are able to do this, then we remember that this can be developed only with gradual and repeated practice. It takes time. These things do not occur instantly. It may take years, number of years, for such concentration to come. One must realize that here there are three stages of concentration broadly we are looking at. The first is dharana, when we bring the mind from the world outside to one area, to one zone, and hold it there. And as we are holding it there, the mind is getting used to be in that zone, in that area. Then we make it further sharpened, the focus. We bring it to one point and we hold it at that point for a longer duration, for a substantially longer duration. And once when we do that, then our mind reaches the state of samadhi. And even here in samadhi, as I told you, there are various stages of samadhi. The two main stages being sabij samadhi and nirbij samadhi. So the mind has to go through a lot of stages till it reaches the ultimate, the final state of samadhi. Now what happens is, once when we say that the mind is one-pointed, that the mind is focused on one point, what we are effectively saying is that the image on which the mind is focused, the object which the mind is seeing in terms of an image, it is seeing the same image now, and after a moment it is again seeing the same image. So the image is not changing, but the moments are changing. So what it means is that it is not the one image which is there continuously for a long period of time. It is a series of images, moment after moment, having the same content, having the same information, then that is what is called one-pointedness, and that is what we mean by ekagrata. So dear friends, this is important to understand. In ekagrata, in the state of complete concentration, the mind actually is running like a reel of many images, and each image being the same as the other image. And when these multiple images are flowing through the mind, moment after moment, carrying the same information, then that is what is the higher stage of meditation. That is what is meant by samadhi. So dear friends, very important to remember this, that the mind is all pointed. The mind will keep on running like a monkey all over the place, from tree to tree, branch to branch, and it will keep on taking up different things. It will keep on shifting attention. So now what we need to do is, we need to practice, we need to bring our mind to single pointedness. And bringing the mind to single pointedness is the ultimate goal of yoga. It is brought to such a level of single pointedness that a stage is reached where this point becomes so fine that virtually the mind itself disappears. Yes, dear friends, the mind is focused to such a level, to such a degree of accuracy, fineness, sharpness, that the mind starts disappearing from the scene. And that is when the highest form of samadhi starts happening. The nirbij form of samadhi starts happening. So dear friends, it is important, even in our day-to-day working, even in our day-to-day life, we must see that our mind is focused on one thing, one subject, one object, one particular area at a time, and we must not allow our mind to move around, jump around, monkey around. And if we are able to do that, we will find we have a higher control on our mind. We will find our power of the mind also increases. We will also find our capacity to hold knowledge and access new knowledge also increases. We will find our intelligence capability also increases. So there will be huge multiple benefits. So single pointedness is the key. That is why samadhi is a very vital thing which we must learn and practice. One thing which is very important, which we must learn, is that in the mind, when we say in samadhi, the mind is without thought, then what we are saying is, it is only said in the rhetorical terms. Mind is never fixed. Mind is never at a zero state in samadhi, in the sense that when it is concentrated, it is picking image after image in succession with a rapid speed. So every moment the mind is carrying the same image. Now what actually is bringing about these changes? These changes are happening in the mind because mind is part of Prakriti, and Prakriti has the quality of Rajas, the quality of change, the quality of motion, the quality of temporariness. Therefore, dear friends, it is important to understand, even in meditation, these changes keep on occurring. These changes are always part and parcel of the mind. Therefore, when we are practicing meditation and we are able to generate restraining sanskaras, Nirudha sanskaras, then we balance out our natural tendency of the outgoing sanskaras which want to do activity in the world outside, when we equal them in power but in opposite direction, so they cancel each other out in effect, and the net result is that calmness, is that peace which flows in the mind. So dear friends, I come to the end of this talk, and as we have seen that in a yogi's mind there is virtually a war which happens. There is a war which takes place between a very powerful outgoing sanskaras which have always been active, which want to reach out to the world and interact with the world. But a yogi, with his sadhana, with his practice, with his willpower, with his yogic techniques, is able to regulate and control these outward going sanskaras, and he generates these restraining Nirudha causing sanskaras. And these restraining Nirudha causing sanskaras are crucial to reach a state of meditation where the mind is virtually still and at peace, where the sanskaras are effectively neutralizing each other out, are not creating any havoc inside the mind. So dear friends, it takes time, it takes number of years, it takes a lot of dedication, perseverance, faith, energy to practice meditation, to reach that state. And once you are there, then you experience a far higher quality of life, you experience a new world altogether, and you find that the existence around you has sort of changed in its behavior with you. It is listening to you more easily now, it is accepting your demands and desires, and life takes on a deeper, higher meaning. There is also a tendency now to contribute to society, to go for lofty goals in life, to pick up bigger and bigger challenges. It increases the willpower, it increases the intellect level. So lot of benefits happen, because while we are on this process of meditation, we must also remember that the purification of the mind is also happening, dear friends, at the same time. And as this mental purification keeps on happening, we find we keep on growing in multiple dimensions, many a times surprisingly, because we never expected many of the changes which happen. So dear friends, meditation is the playground where you play with your thoughts, you regulate your unwanted thoughts, you bring in the restraining thoughts, and all the work is done inside your head, inside your mind. And if you win this war inside with the thoughts which are running outside, then you become a master, you become a king. There is a saying in Hindi, Man Jeeta, Jag Jeeta. So meditation, dhyana, is that single activity which can help you win the mind over, and it can help you therefore win the world over. Dear friends, thank you so much for being with us here. We have been holding these talks on a regular basis because we believe that with the knowledge, with the wisdom of the Yoga Sutras, it is possible to achieve permanent happiness in one's life. And I'm sure once you understand it and get it, you will want to share it with your family members, with the other members of your society, with people of our country, and also with people of the world at large. So we pray that you are able to achieve this permanent happiness, and we all together are able to bring about a happy planet, create a happy planet for all our children and the coming generations. And if God supports us more, we might bring about a huge civilizational change on planet Earth. Thank you once again for being here. Thank you for being kind enough to listen to me, and I hope that all of us will benefit tremendously. We will be able to heal ourselves completely with the Yoga Sutras, and we will also be able to heal the whole world together with the power of these Yoga Sutras. Thank you so much. God bless each one of you. Thank you.